but it's okay because we have Luka now. And Kyrie, listen, if Kyrie brings a title here, I'll become a flat earther. I don't give a fuck.
Hello, Guardians. Welcome back to Tower Casuals, the Destiny podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Corey Derrigan. Alongside me, as always, is the caffeine-free flat earther, Josh Finney.
Oh my god, I hate you so much. I made a joke about if Kyrie and Luka bring a title to Dallas, I will become a flat earther. And I like how Corey was running with that.
You don't have to explain yourself, Josh. We know. We know. You would do anything for a Mavericks championship, okay?
I would do some unspeakable acts.
I'm just saying you should get
for Luka Doncic to win his first title, I would do some unspeakable acts.
Josh would dust off his knee pads to go have Luka win a championship.
Oh, brother, I'll get the elbow pads out too.
Oh God.
I'll do it.
Oh man.
Yeah, so that's an alarming opening for everybody. Hi,
yeah.
Corey.
Hi, Josh. If this is your first time to the show, welcome. This is what.
Welcome. The show is already off the rails.
Jesus Christ! So it was the first 6 minutes of this recording before we started the show.
And us complaining about the Cleveland Browns' new warehouse-looking stadium.
I'm not even going to talk about it.
Corey, it's been an eventful week.
It's been something. It's been a
really busy week.
You know how much has gone on this week, Josh? I feel like it's been a month since we talked about the Bungie layoffs last week.
It has been really busy because we got all the layoffs last week. We did the episode on Thursday. I did another recording on Friday because we had the Bloomberg article and all of Jeff Grubb's information drop, as well as the firing of Luke Smith. Saturday, Paul Tassi dropped something. And I was like, no, I'm not. Or it was either Saturday or it was Friday evening. It was one of the two. And I was like, I am absolutely not turning back and doing another one of these. August 3rd. So yeah, last Friday last Friday after I'd already recorded is when I saw it. And I was like, I'm not doing this. We are not doing this right now.
Yeah.
I was very tired. I'll put it that way. And then, we had a lot of Xbox stuff break over the weekend. We had to talk about that on Monday.
The Game Informer stuff.
The Game Informer stuff happens, which, you know, I talked a little last Friday about. And we waxed poetic about Game Informer for like 25 minutes on Xbox Casuals on Monday. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened in game. I'm starting a new diet, which is destroying my insides.
Isn't it great? Like. Doesn't that feel great?
No, I feel like I'm dying. I have to go to the dentist in the morning. I'm not happy right now, man. It's been an eventful week for me. It's not going to be a relaxing weekend.
No. Have you hit the point in your diet where you just feel like you can't get off the toilet because your diet has changed?
Yes.
Isn't that the worst?
That was this afternoon.
Oh, it's the worst.
It's great. It's great. Yeah. Cleansing my body has been wonderful. And I mean that both seriously and sarcastically. All right. I guess let's just get into this. We have a lot tonight. Pretty meaty schwab, which we'll get to in a minute. I want to start with the Paul Tassi article from last week. Okay. There's not a lot in here that we didn't already cover, but there were some new details that I think we need to talk about, I guess. Particularly when it comes to future Destiny plans. So we got a bit of clarification on what exactly was being worked on over there. So future Destiny plans. Let's hit this. Larger content packs, though not true expansions, will contain familiar elements like destinations, raids, and campaigns, just much smaller scale on the whole. Shadowkeep-ish size, maybe, though not that same format. The goal is developing more replayable, unique activities like the Coil. If we are leaving the system, this is where we'd see those new worlds to visit. I am not sure if this will be free. So that's the first thing I want to clear up is, I've seen a lot of people on the internet and in our own Discord being like, "Oh, I can't, getting Shadowkeep size expansions for free are going to be amazing." No, what was being reported by Schreier as being free were the Into the Light sized updates. It is being speculated that these mini expansions, which all indications are he's calling them Shadowkeep sized, I'm calling them Warmind and Curse of Osiris sized. Will not be free. You'll probably pay like $40 for an expansion pass and get both throughout the year. Maybe they get crazy and say for $50 you get that with the dungeon pass. Maybe we get crazy here, and there's probably going to be like 2 episodes. This will be the main release of a given year, starting with the Frontiers launch, and then 6 months later there will be another pack of smaller content that's something more along the lines of what we got with Into the Light, which should be free. Between these, there may be something akin to episodes, though the scale and schedule is not clear. The idea is less sprawling one-off campaigns and a greater focus on replayable activities and the hobby aspect. With the new Frontiers format, there aren't widespread updates that will hit every facet of the game at once like most expansions used to. It will be less than players are used to, but that is not to say there will not be things worth playing. So if I'm trying to decipher this, it feels like we're going to get a real expansion, quote unquote, that is somewhere between Warmind to Shadowkeep size. And then you'll get an episode or 2, and then you'll get a big like QOL update akin to like Into the Light or 30th anniversary, and then get another episode or 2, and then rinse and repeat. I don't know if I like this in a vacuum just because we don't know what those packs are going to look like yet. Introducing more destinations though, but them being even smaller is not great, especially after how good the Pale Heart is as a destination.
Right.
Like when I look at good destinations, I think of the Pale Heart, I think of the Throne World. I don't really think of anything else that's currently still in the game. I think Neomuna was bad. It's way too spread out. Too much traversing, essentially. Like the idea behind Neomuna, I don't think Neomuna itself was executed very well. Europa's a joke. It's also pretty rough. If you're going to give me something that's Shadowkeep sized, that to me says you're aiming for the moon, maybe smaller as a patrol space. And the moon, being one of the D1 locations, was a bit more built up because that was built for the main release. I just don't know how big we can reasonably expect it to be. So it kind of feels like you're not going to get anything on the level of the Pale Heart ever again. I hope you enjoyed it. At least for like maybe the next 2 years, you're not going to get that. Maybe if the game is still going, you'll get it. But I would be really, really bummed if we go to like Reese, or we go to, say, the War Moon that used to be Tora Bottle, and we start exploring them and they're that small. I'd be really bummed. But this also would make sense for if the Dreadnought is coming back. Okay, yeah, the Dreadnought's probably going to be a smaller area. It's a big area, but it's ultimately not. Like if you cut out all the areas of where you gained access to the ship originally, and you cut out like the Kingsfall raid and like the strike areas, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Court of Oryx was really the big area, right?
Right.
So that would be my suspicion, is that the Dreadnought is kind of like a test run for this. Maybe if we get the Tangled Shore back with next season. I just, there's not enough here to press judgment on yet. Bungie did put out a statement tonight on the Destiny 2 Twitter account, or on the D2 team Twitter account, which I want to pull up and read. The Destiny 2 team Twitter account says, "We know the recent changes that Bungie have created uncertainty surrounding the future of Destiny. Rest assured, we remain committed to Destiny, to supporting our community with transparency and delivering regular updates about the game. We'll be talking with you all about the future of Destiny and plans for our next multi-year journey soon. Once we plan to flag for the date, we'll let you all know." That, to me, says we're probably going to get a date announcement here in the next week. I would be very surprised if we come back for next week's episode and we don't have that date set in stone. It is probably going to be the traditional late August, early September showcase.
Yeah.
Especially because we've said it for forever. You're not going to let the 10th anniversary go without something.
Right.
You're going to do something for the 10th anniversary. They probably wanted to do like a little bit of a live stream anyways to show off Act 3 coming up.
Yeah.
It seems like they're doing a live stream for each act. So like, hey, if you're going to do that, that would kind of be a great time to roll all that together. Maybe the week before release. 2 weeks is a little rough there. All right, let's talk canceled projects.
Canceled projects.
Oh boy. This really frustrates me. So among the canceled projects, include Project Payback. Elements of Payback seem to be shaping up well. The third-person adventure spin-off shooter Luke and Mark were working on. I have not heard anyone say it was a flat-out bad idea or terrible in practice, even if the concept sounded like a significant departure for the series. I've said that. I mean, I think that comparing it to Warframe and Genshin in the initial disclosure about it did more harm than anything to the public perception of this idea. I've seen a lot of people go, "Oh, thank God that got canceled." I'm not gonna be so quick to jump on it. It's why, as much as I'm not interested in Marathon, I do think if anybody could nail bringing extraction shooters into the mainstream, it's Bungie, because that's what they've done for forever.
Right.
They've always said, we like to make the kinds of games that we would want to play. We want to push the boundaries, this and that, like. And we all know what Halo and Destiny have done, obviously. I've heard multiple people, and it's all from Paul Tassi. I've heard multiple people say of all projects, Gummy Bear seemed to be the most promising. The game that is headed over to Sony under the new team. It has MOBA and Smash Brothers inspired fighting game elements and is supposed to be very fun. Again, this is something like, it's like Marathon. Like, I need to see actual gameplay from this game before I allow myself to get excited. This one's been in the works for years, though. We heard the rumors of a MOBA back in like 2019, 2020. But here's the one that everybody cares about. Destiny 3. Destiny 3 was and is considered to be too big of a risk in the current market. I agree with that. I 100% agree with this. The idea was instead to split Destiny up as an IP into more manageable components. The PvE portion we have now would continue as Destiny 2, Payback for an adventure game genre expansion, a mobile Destiny game from NetEase, and spinning out a separate 3v3 Crucible game channeling Trials. It appears none of this is happening now, alongside Destiny 3 never being in production in the first place. There's no plans to just shutter Destiny, however, and long-term rebranding remains unclear, but it's D2 Frontiers content only for the indefinite future, and Marathon remains the next big thing going into 2025. I'm okay with no Destiny 3. I don't really love the choice, but I think it was always going to be hard to continue on with Tiger and make it a satisfying experience to not only retain your player base, but to also attract new players, which we're about to talk to. Destiny 2 has historically struggled with it. It has a really bad onboarding process.
It's terrible.
It's gotten more and more complicated. It is really hard to, even people who like play the game once a year, I have to spend like an hour or two explaining to them how shit works when they log back in. And that's not fun for anybody. It doesn't make for a fun player experience or for an onboarding experience. Shahan is terrible. I maintain bringing back the Cosmodrome was an awful idea. I can pretty safely look back on that now and say we should never have brought the Cosmodrome back. We should have just left the Red War shit in.
Yeah.
I have no that is the most baffling fucking thing to me.
I don't even remember why the Cosmodrome was brought back. It came back during a season, right?
It came back during Beyond Light. And it was to accentuate the New Light campaign. Everybody was excited at first because we can get Kvastov, we can get the original Guardianship, we can get the Generalist shell, and it's just dog shit. Like, you gave me 2 versions of Original Strikes, and then you changed Omnigul up, but you keep referencing Omnigul and all sorts of stuff. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
it feels really bad that the Cosmodrome came back and has basically been useless.
Yeah, it's not great.
No, it's not great at all. It's really dumb. But one of the ongoing issues with Destiny, and I hadn't really thought about it this way until Paul laid it out here, is that the player base is skewing much older than everyone wants to see, which is worrisome to the higher ups. You want to attract a younger crowd, and that's no longer happening. Hence the desire for new IP like Marathon and Gummy Bears. And another reason as to why no Destiny 3. I do agree with that. The player base for Destiny does seem to skew a lot older, and maybe that's just the circles I run in. I have encountered less and less younger players talking about it, or younger users on socials talking about it. And I think that's because most of us playing Destiny grew up to some degree with Halo. If you played Destiny 1, you grew up playing Halo. If you played Destiny 2, yeah, you may have come in when you were younger, but younger players are no longer flocking to it because in the time since Destiny 2 came out, you have had Warzone drop, you have seen Call of Duty go through a bit of a resurgence, you have seen Fortnite come out, you've seen Apex Legends come out, Roblox has exploded onto the scene, FIFA has taken off internationally, which it was already popular. It's become way more popular now. You know, you have all these other games that are competing for people's time and money, and there's only a finite amount of time and money to go around, especially for younger players. And in a game that nickel and dimes you, it's really hard to sell somebody on paying upfront for $100 of content a year. It's really, really hard to justify that, because if you don't buy it all at once, guess what? You decide you want to buy a la carte. The dungeon keys never go on sale. The seasons never go on sale. It's hard. And then to say, oh yeah, by the way, all the seasonal content, that's all going to go away. That's a very hard sell to me.
Yeah.
And so I can kind of understand it from there. And then there's some details on Bungie internally. Everyone does not trust leadership at all, but leadership doesn't seem to grasp that. Some on the leadership team believe last week went better than it could have. They think the situation went well considering. I guarantee you that is one Peter Parsons.
That's a interesting take.
That's an interesting take considering I don't know if I've ever seen the industry, even when Tango was shuttered earlier this year, I don't know that I've seen so much rage around firings.
Right.
Like, Tango is a very close second, don't get me wrong. This drew more ire than any of the ones that I've seen from Embracer Group, that I've seen from Microsoft, that I saw from Activision, that we've seen from Sony, with good reason. This is a studio that already had 100 last year and then just released a critically acclaimed expansion 6 weeks before layoffs. So, this was the most interesting one to me. The amount of stuff that was done for the final shape was massive. Story was rewritten multiple times, missions redesigned multiple times. During the delay, so keep in mind, the delay was announced at the beginning of November. During the delay, they built a colossal amount of new content, including the Dread enemy race, the dual Destiny mission, the Verity encounter of Salvation's Edge, exotic class items, the Ergo Sum exotic sword, and Grandmaster Excision. The reason being is the studio was told this expansion is make or break, and now they all feel lied to for obvious reasons. Now the new mantra is Marathon is make or break. I want you to listen to that. Again, an entire enemy race, dual Destiny, Verity, exotic class items with random perks, Ergo Sum that has random rolls and random perks, and Grandmaster Excision. None of that would have been in the game without the delay. We also know they reworked the ending because it has come out that originally the Guardian was going to use the powers of light and dark to bring Ghost back, and Cade was going to continue to live. That much being added while Into the Light was being made, mind you, is insane. That is the very definition of crunch culture right there. The fact that all of that was done after the delay is wild to me. I think that also explains why we're not seeing the Dread in any other content right now. is they were there just for that. Salvation's Edge is not the best raid in the history of the franchise without Verity. It's not. I would say it doesn't even crack my top 4 without the Verity encounter. Like, it arguably doesn't crack top 5 without Verity, to me. That's how important that encounter is to the raid.
That's so crazy, man.
It's insane. Dual Destiny has been praised by multiple creators, storytellers, Destiny enthusiasts as the very best mission in the history of the franchise. I would agree with that. I think it is one of the best, absolute best pieces of content they've ever done. I think it's the most unique piece of content they've ever done. The exotic class items, can you imagine? Like, Prismatic still would be really fun, don't get me wrong. I use Prismatic without my cloak all the time. It is significantly better with the class items. It is significantly more fun for build crafters and for the hardcore base. Ergo Sum, same way. Extremely fun for those who like to build craft and chase random perks and random rolls. And a GM Excision is just one of the craziest things I've ever done. The fact that that thing worked flawlessly is wild. Absolutely wild. But I can't imagine going in and not having any of that content in Final Shape, because I think those are some of the best elements. I know that we all slapped reviews on it before Dual Destiny came out. So they took an already great expansion and made it even better when they put out the rest of the content. I don't understand how you look at that and then you say, okay, yeah, these people got to go, though. These people have got to go. The new player onboarding experience remains bad because the team who did the Cosmodrome and Shahan stuff got one crack at it, and then no one ever tried anything of significance again. This may change in the future. I would not count on it. Bungie has essentially tied the games as a service forever. Nothing single player. Matter was not a live service FPS, so that was part of the reason it was axed. So that finally answers the question about what Matter was after all these years. Matter was a single-player game. Let that sink in for a minute. They got rid of a Bungie single-player game because it would be one-time income. I was talking about this with Joasis and A1 Johnny last night. We were talking about like how Larian's support has been on Baldur's Gate 3, and we were talking about Helldivers 2 and how that was an unexpected success, and like we got around to talking about Bungie, and that, you know, Sony bought Bungie because they really want these teams that can make these always profitable online games, right? They want constant revenue streams. And it's funny because Microsoft kind of stumbled ass backwards into it from the beginning. Halo was a wild success from day one, which nobody anticipated.
Right.
And then, of course, you know, we know Halo 2, 3, Reach, and 4 all went on to be these colossal mega hits. Regardless of your opinions on 4, it was a mega hit. It's one of the best-selling games of all time, especially on Xbox platforms. I think it actually is the best-selling Xbox game of all time, outselling Halo 1 and 2. That's really how well Halo 4 sold in the last year of the 360.
Mm-hmm.
Something like, I think it was like 14 million copies in a year and a half is what it sold.
Right.
That's GTA level numbers. That's unheard of today.
Right.
So, you know, you stumble ass backwards into franchises like that, like Forza, like Gears of War, you know, and they had the foundation. They knew what it took. They knew, hey, we can't put all our eggs into just multiplayer. Like, multiplayer can be the thing that sustains us long term on these games. We need to have a kick-ass single player with it, though. Their first crack at an always online game did not go well. I think we all remember when Sea of Thieves came out, and it was horrible. I was shocked that it didn't get shut down. They stuck with it because they're Microsoft, and it was Rare making their first new IP in years and years. And, you know, now Sea of Thieves is celebrated as an example of what can happen if you stick with a project. But I think, you know, you look at these studios and, you know, I've seen people complain about how Factions got shut down over at Naughty Dog. The changes that Naughty Dog was going to have to undergo in order to sustain Factions as a live service game is nuts compared to if Factions 2.0 had just been a multiplayer mode included with The Last of Us Part 2 on PS5. or as a standalone download if you didn't want to do that. You could buy it standalone for like $20.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but that being a game as a service, that is a concept that, I'm sorry, that is not sustainable. You can want to play it all day long. Are you really going to tell me you're going to play that game repeatedly for years?
Right.
I have a hard time imagining, outside of a very small hardcore audience, that that's going to happen. You know, we talk about how hard it is to break past like those top like 10 to 15 online games, right? Like Destiny even struggles to get out, you know, get past those top 10, right? That's why like Helldivers should be celebrated as much as we are, because it's broken through that.
Right.
Even if it's not sustainable, it's broken through. It's been massively profitable, but it was an affordable game at $40. It was instantly profitable. And yeah, it's done some content drops. It's done some DLC, some premium war bonds, but like nothing egregious over here in terms of pricing. Destiny, I mean, I'm paying $12 for an emote if I want to go buy an exotic emote. You know, I'm paying 20 something bucks for a dungeon key if I didn't buy the $100 edition. And like they made it hard to figure out how to organize these on the Steam store and on the, you know, on the storefronts for Xbox and PlayStation. And eventually it just gets cumbersome and tiresome. So I say all that to say, taking a studio that has such rich storytelling like Bungie and relegating them to being just an online multiplayer studio is really frustrating to watch. This is directly indicative of where Jason Jones took them in, you know, 2010, 2011, when they decided to actually push forward on what would become Destiny 1.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and yes, I understand that, like, I love the story, I love the lore. We talk about it every week for a reason. But Bungie's also made some of the best shooter campaigns of all time in Halo, you know, 1, 2, 3, and Reach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, ODSTs is really fucking good too if you've never played it. Really, really great game. You know, they made these awesome Halo campaigns, and I would argue that, you know, the Taken King is in those conversations. The Witch Queen, Forsaken, The Final Shape, like those campaigns are their own legacy within Destiny. And like, yeah, we could get stuff like that, but I don't think we're gonna get something like that in Marathon.
Nope.
I don't think Gummy Bears is gonna give us that.
Nope.
So instead, you know, those feel like games that may go on for a couple of years just because of the Bungie name, and then they're going to be quietly shuttered. And especially because it seems to be that their model is doing free to play games and just loading them with microtransactions now. A couple other little details. Many departments have been completely gutted after the layoffs. Almost all of QA is outsourced to people unfamiliar with even the basics of the game. That's wonderful.
Great. Great news.
Great news.
That's something you want to hear as a fan.
That's something you want to hear as somebody who covers this every week. Everything has been divided up into strike teams, even down to individual missions and activity modifiers.
Oh my god.
They form, are dissolved, and then reform. Speculation is the higher ups saw that players liked when they called things strike teams, so now there's a million strike teams. No, we liked it when you did a PvP one because it meant you acknowledged PvP existed.
Right.
There's a difference here. And then even with updates, many tools are exhausting to use and everything takes forever. And if Destiny 2 content is still being added, there will indeed be more vaulting for technical reasons alone, though whether the no more expansion content vaulting rule applies is unclear.
Great.
I don't even know what else you can vault at this point.
You can vault the Cosmodrome and the New Light experience.
That's about it. That's about all you could get rid of is the Cosmodrome at this point. But then you're taking out 3 strikes and like 5 battlegrounds if you do that. Can you afford to lose that content in the Vanguard playlist?
I mean, I guess it depends on what comes out in these episodes, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the battlegrounds after a couple of years probably could go away. But
I mean, I'm fine with all the Cosmodrome stuff going away if you're going to add things to the episodes.
I am too, but like that's what I'm saying. Like we need a clear path forward,
right?
And it feels like they're flying by the seat of their pants right now because they are. And I have a really hard time being optimistic about the future of the game right now. And we're going to talk about some other things. You know, we've got some Solstice stuff to get into either this week or next week. We had an awesome story beat that we had to skip last week. Like there are still things to be happy about, but it's really, really hard to be optimistic about the long-term future of the game right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this week the speedrunning community basically was killed with the axing of Eager Edge, flinging your teammates. The speedrunning community is pretty pissed off about that. We know the person who was responsible for saving Well and Shatter Skating is gone now, so remains to be seen how long that's going to stay in the game. There's a lot of stuff that's just like, it's things you don't need to get rid of that you're getting rid of. Also, maybe learn how to optimize your game better and you wouldn't need to vault content. World of Warcraft doesn't have to do this shit. ESO doesn't have to do this shit.
Right.
Why do you have to do it?
Right.
ESO's got 10 fucking expansions over there, for God's sake. It's just absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah, I mean, I just...
And I want to be really clear. My doubt in this is due to leadership. It is not due to the people still working.
Right. I think people who have listened to us for a while know.
I still want to make that really clear. Like, I'm not doubting the people who are still working there. I am doubting the leadership team pretty heavily. I asked for some input over the week as to what the future of this is. And Ronnie's comment was so long. I want to read parts of this. Ronnie's comment was so long he has submitted in two comments, which is really funny to me. All right, my personal thoughts on Bungie, but most importantly, D2 going forward. All right, it's the start of the week, which means there will be, I'm sure, tons of news to come out after I post this, including the first TWAB. We know Bungie leadership at the tip top is trash. My heart goes out to both the community as well as the devs that pour their heart and soul into the game. Won't talk about things that are out of my control, but I will talk about what I control in the future of Destiny. I am still hopeful. Maybe I'm old and crazy, but from what we know going forward about Destiny specifically itself, I'm still hopeful. 2 more episodes still have to go in the near future, and then 2 free DLCs throughout the years and season passes. That's good enough for me personally. I will say, we did clarify this. We do not know if both will be free.
Right.
It is not. I would almost guarantee you that big one, or the bigger one, the Shadowkeep size one, will probably not be free. That is, they cannot afford to leave income on the table at this point.
Yeah.
Unless Marathon is a runaway hit, which I don't think any of us expect it to be.
Yeah.
Will we get another Witch Queen or Final Shape like expansion later on? I'm hopeful, but it probably won't be until 2027 at the earliest. Bungie, mainly Pete, are putting all their eggs in one basket, which is Marathon. When, not if, but when it falls flat on its face. This isn't me saying I want it to, but I believe that's where most D2 players are at and thinking for different reasons. That's when the shift by Sony will shift back to the cash cow reason they purchased Bungie in the first place. They didn't purchase it because of Marathon. They purchased it because of the market building success D2 has had. I'm sure some lies and truths from Pete also contributed. In the meantime, giving hardcore players like myself content to keep tuning into the game. The community will say on life support, I suppose. D2 is my go-to game. I don't play other games much because Destiny scratches the itch for me. When I have time to play games, it's usually Destiny because I haven't run out of things to do. Even when it's not raiding or my friends are online, I still have things I can do. So I'll still be teaching and doing raids, dungeons, and even the content activities. I'll be doing my own thing until Sony shuts the servers off. Man, I want to say, I don't mean this in a derogatory way. I really commend your dedication to the game and to the grind. I commend it. That, it's obviously your own prerogative, what you want to do with your time, your money, your efforts. I do agree that nothing scratches the itch like Destiny. Mm-hmm. I have yet to find, in 10 years, I've yet to find another game that feels the way Destiny does. And I think that's why it's so hard for so many of us to quit it, is despite all the bullshit that we went through with Destiny 1 and with Vanilla D2 and even, like Shadowkeep and things like that, it's been so hard to quit it because no game feels this way. We crawl back after a few months.
Mm-hmm.
And that's both good and bad. Like it's an addictive game. Mm-hmm. It's an addictive game. I think we can all agree with that. I will say, minor correction on the on why Sony purchased them. They did purchase it for Destiny, but they purchased it a lot more because Bungie has a 20-year history of making multiplayer and story experiences that people like. Not just like, but that they fall in love with. Like Halo is one of the most recognizable video games of all time. I think if you made a top 10 list of video game characters that the general public would know, Master Chief is pretty high up on that list. Like for God's sake, my 83-year-old grandmother knew who Master Chief was, you know? Destiny's never quite had that same appeal. Destiny has been a pretty, outside of the two main game launches, it's been a pretty niche thing. It's got, and by niche, I mean it's got a dedicated community, not a small community. It's got a big community. And it really seemed to peak around the time of the Witch Queen, because Witch Queen was when everybody was coming back. They were all excited, like, oh my God, we got to see what happened with Savathun. Like, people were enjoying Stasis at the time once they got it balanced. The 30th anniversary was coming up. And we knew that they were proud of it because they were touting the pre-order numbers, for God's sake. And the last two just haven't hit it for whatever reason. Maybe it's exhaustion because of seasons. Lightfall wasn't great. There's a variety of things that you can toss into that. But I mean, like, time, money, people aging out of the demographic. Like, there's a lot of things to consider here. And I'm not saying, anybody's right or wrong. Like, if you want to ride and die with this to the end, cool. Like, I'll probably be there to some degree with you. But there will come a time where seasonal updates aren't enough to keep me playing.
Right.
There will come a time when I just don't want to play the old content anymore. Like, let me host a private server or something and play with my friends, but there will come a time where I'm not playing anymore. And that's always been the one core problem with Destiny not having an offline campaign mode, is I can't boot up. I won't be able to boot up in the future and say, man, I really want to go run the final shape again. I won't be able to do that eventually. And that bothers me. Whereas like something like Halo, I can pop in and still run to this day. I can show people why I love Halo so much. My girlfriend had never played the Halo trilogy before we started dating. She had only played Halo 4, funny enough, and she only picked up Halo 4 because she had heard me talking about it.
Jeez.
So she bought an Xbox and Halo like within a month of us starting to date, so that she could play it with me. And so she loves Halo 4 for reasons that the community will never understand. When we played the trilogy, she was like, oh, those are cool stories, but I really like Halo 4 still, because we have so many memories there. Similarly, I have those memories with the Destiny community, and eventually I'm not going to be able to show people the stories about why I love this universe so much. I'm going to have to rely on BIFE videos and YouTube archives.
Yeah.
And that's a damn shame. I'm not going to be able to actually explain to people this is one of the smoothest playing, unique first-person shooters that there ever was. And it's all going to go away because like the always online stuff has really jaded me the older I've gotten. It didn't bother me when I was in my 20s. Now that I'm in my 30s, I'm like, damn, I would really love to show this to my kids someday. And I won't be able to.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Because I've been playing some games with my kids and it's like, oh man, am I going to be able to show my son Destiny when he's old enough to play it, like, and I was really thinking about that the other day because we were playing, I don't know, my son's really into Paw Patrol. So we were playing, Mighty Pup Save Adventure Bay, Josh. And, I don't know if you've played that hot little ditty on Game Pass, but, yeah, I was thinking about that and I was like, man, the games that I really love to play right now, like Destiny and even parts of Halo, like the newer Halo games, or whatever the next Gears is going to be, like, am I going to be able to show my son this in 5, 6, 7 years when he's old enough? Am I going to be able to show him Sea of Thieves? Am I going to be able to show him some of these games that just live online? I don't know. I don't know. And it kind of sucks to think about that because I would love to have that relationship with my son someday of like playing games online with him.
Right.
And, I mean, obviously there's going to be 100 other games that you could play online between now and the time he's old enough. Right. But like, man, Destiny's the one that got me. And, I was, I mean, it wouldn't matter anyway because you're not going to be able to play 90% of the story by then anyway. But
right,
the way that things are going. But
I think that's kind of where I come down. Like I'll be right there with you guys. I'll still be playing. It scratches an itch that nothing else does, but also all of the things that keep happening at Bungie HQ just make it easier and easier for me to not really have any interest in what they do outside of maybe the next big expansion.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me want to go spend time on other games. Like, I'm still here for the story, don't get me wrong. I've paid for the next year of content. I'm going to play the next year of content. And I don't want you to think like, oh man, this guy does a Destiny podcast and fucking hates this game. Like, no, I don't hate it. I really, really hate the way the company is run. And that, for me personally, makes it really, really hard to want to keep supporting said company. Mm-hmm. Like I'm in this interesting place of like I want to support the developers because they're so passionate and they're so good at what they do. Like Bungie truly had one of the best first person shooter studios in the world and has just nuked it. Has absolutely nuked it. Real quickly, there was one other piece I wanted to move on to regarding some stuff going on at Destiny at Bungie. Let me get it pulled up here real fast. Inside Gaming wrote about it earlier today, or yesterday, I guess it was. Either way, I bookmarked it. This comes to us from Insider Gaming. In a new briefing video, Sony President, COO, and CFO Hiroki Totoki offered clarifying statements about Bungie's restructuring plans. The purpose of the restructure is cost restructure and portfolio optimization. They also said that Bungie's back office functions should be integrated with the studio of SIE. I would say that's a pretty significant step right there. Bungie has now lost all autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
It's over.
Yep.
It's over. You're making what Sony wants you to make now.
Yep.
And if you want to make something that's not in that pipeline of Destiny or Marathon, it's going to have to be approved by them.
Yep.
I always think back to when, because Sony's pretty notorious for making you have to make a real good case to make a game at Sony.
Yep.
If you're one of their studios. I remember when they wanted, Guerrilla. Guerrilla was known as the Killzone studio. That's all they made. And they wanted to make something that wasn't Killzone. And in fact, Herman Hulse, who's now the head of SIE, has talked about it, went in there to go pitch Horizon for the first time. And they had to basically beg and plead to make this game. And Sony finally agreed. It ends up being a smash success, right?
Yep.
We had something similar to Santa Monica. They wanted Santa Monica to make something that was not God of War. Mm-hmm. And Cory Barlog was like, because they were convinced the brand was dead as far as they were concerned after Ascension. Mm-hmm. Was that the last PS3 one?
Yep.
They were convinced the brand was dead, this and that. And I think we all were like, okay, the story has been milked enough.
Yeah, I mean, well, on the PS3 generation too, we got what four games plus the collections all on the same console, and it was like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah, you got because God of War 1 came out towards the end of the PS2 generation. God of War 2, funny enough, came out on PS2 after the PS3.
2007, I got
2007. After the PS3 had already been released and so many people had already gotten rid of PS2s. It comes out. God of War 3 in 2010. You had Ascension, I think, in 2012. You had 2 PSP games in that time frame also.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was a lot of, in like a 7-year span, you had like 6 God of War games.
Mm-hmm.
And the franchise just, after 3 was done, people were like, well, we're done with the story, and didn't really care.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Cory Barlog had this idea for the reboot, had to go in, had to really fight for it. And what do you know? You produced one of the best games of the entire generation that way, So there is a case that, like, if you have a game you want to make and you go pitch it to Sony and you are passionate enough about it, they're going to let you do it. Bungie, they're going to be a lot more strict on Bungie because Bungie's not trying to make a single player game. They're there to make you money.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to be told, no, you are working on the 2 things that make us money right now. The plans are to concentrate Bungie's headcount and resources on Destiny 2 and Marathon. There will be constant resources there. However, other title development will instead move to PlayStation Studios. We are assuming that is Gummy Bears, and I don't know if there's any non-Destiny project that was in the works that maybe survives. Maybe there was the piece from was Jason Schreier last week who was saying that they had been working on a remaster or remake of one of their earlier games, which I think the only game it could be is Oni. If you were remaking Oni, maybe that gets outsourced to, like, maybe you send that to Blue Point and have their team do it, because they've done a lot of remakes and remasters over the years. Maybe they take Oni if that was happening. But Gummy Bears seems to be the only game that's going to escape all this, because everything else was Destiny.
Yeah.
And it's a damn shame, but that's where we are. Totoki also broadly said the organizational structure will be changed. There are plans to optimize the overall studio structure. I have to believe this means that they are going to show Pete and Jason Jones the door as soon as possible. Like, as soon as humanly possible, they are getting them out of there. I'm sure, and I was saying this earlier, I think that there probably are clauses in the buyout clause for Bungie to Sony that those two cannot be let go or fired until their shares vest from the purchase. You know, of course, nobody else is going to get them. Not even Luke Smith is going to see a dime from this, right? But those two are making sure they're leaving with their parachutes intact. I just genuinely cannot wait for these guys to get out of here.
Yeah, it's been
Pete especially. Jason's been really quiet in recent years, but the thing that always sticks out to me about Jason is how he got rid of oh my god, we say his name all the time and I'm completely blanking right now. The Joe Staten. He got rid of Joe Staten 10, 11 months before the game released, before Destiny 1 released, and completely reworked the entire story with the group he called the Iron Bar, which included Chris Barrett, Luke Smith, and guys like that. And I always think back to that when I think about Jason Jones, and like, man, this guy probably should have gone a while ago. This also all puts into perspective a story Tom Warren wrote last summer for The Verge, where he talked about how Microsoft explored buying Bungie and ultimately decided against it. It was a story that you and I actually missed when it was published, Corey. About they decided not to buy Bungie because of the high burn rate of employees there.
Yeah,
employees and resources.
I think we talked about it on Xbox Casuals, actually.
I don't know. I completely I feel like I completely missed it. Maybe we did. I've slept a lot since then. I genuinely did not remember that story, and I was just like, wow. You know, I've spent the last, couple of years seeing like, man, Microsoft should have just bought Bungie instead of Activision. And like, well, no, now we kind of know why they didn't.
Right.
I think part of it would have been, hey, we want Pete and Jason to step aside and give Luke. We're going to give Luke full control. You guys are going to keep making Destiny. We're going to let you make other projects, but you're not doing that. You're not going to self-publish. Basically, everything that has now happened to them at Sony would have been part of the agreement.
Yeah.
Sony also overpaid significantly. We know that Microsoft's offer was in the $1 billion range, and Sony paid 3.6, which is approximately half of what Microsoft paid for all of Bethesda's ZeniMax. So, anyways, I don't want this to be all negatives. We do have some kick-ass stuff to talk about. I don't have any other thoughts on any of this. Do you, Corey, before we move on?
Nope.
I feel like I've spent the better part of an hour complaining about this now.
I feel like we've spent a better part of 2 weeks complaining about some of this stuff.
We really have. Before we jump into all that, we do have a couple questions that pertain to this, and I want to do these questions before we get too far. Chickly Panda writes in and asks, do you think Destiny is a lot like the Marvel Cinematic Universe? We're constantly saying we're back, and then we're not. I mean, that's live service gaming in a nutshell. I think that's just like gaming and pop culture in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Like it just is. I don't think it's any one thing. We went through this with Game of Thrones. We've gone through this. We went through this with the DC universe. We're going through it with Marvel. We've gone through it with Star Wars. Halo goes through this like every other week on the timeline. Being a fan of Xbox has definitely led to this like a dozen times over the last 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
It's just kind of a fact of life at this point. Like that's not, I don't think it's strictly related to Destiny, but I mean it's less of a Destiny thing and more of a Bungie thing at this, so a Bungie leadership thing. Like it's like they push for the sprint to get everything done as good as possible, the workers do it, but then everything is booby trapped by management.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably the best comparison I can do for it. So and then Tiger Jesus writes in and asks, "What are some changes Sony can do to make you feel optimistic about the future of Destiny?"
I mean, just honestly, like I think a lot of the reason is that we kind of feel negative right now, aside from everything that just happened, is like there's
aside from the everything.
yeah, is that like now that the dust is kind of settling from last week a little bit, we don't know the direction really after the next two episodes, right? And that's kind
Right.
of, you know, what,
and that's okay.
yeah, it's totally okay. It's just I think people are feeling uneasy because we don't know what's going to happen, and now we definitely don't know what's going to happen because half the studio is gone in the last 8 months or so, right? So
Yeah.
If they would just kind of come out and say, hey, look, you know we lost a lot of people, but the people that are still here are working hard. Here's what we're working on. Here's the roadmap. Here we know you've been reading all these things, whether they're true or not. Kind of say that, and if we just knew a direction, right, and like somebody came out and just stated, hey, we're going to give you 2 smaller content packs a year. Here's what they are. Here are the episodes that go with them. That kind of thing. I think people would feel a lot better, or at least like their game isn't dying, because I think there's a lot of hyperbole out there on the internet, Josh. I don't know if you know this or not, but
I mean, I tend to see some of it from time to time.
But I think people kind of feel like Destiny is dead now that people got laid off, but there's still 850 people that work there, right? And
yeah,
so
the best estimate I can come up with you is probably around 300 to 400 work on each game,
mm-hmm.
and then the remaining are support and office staff and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know an easier way to break that down. We'll never have exact studio numbers for privacy reasons,
right?
But
and there'll be floaters that float between games, and
for me the bigger thing is, I think like a lot of concept artists specifically.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the big thing is, I think that if Sony came out and said, "Hey, our dedicated team that we have that bounces around to help teams get games out the door, maybe you let them come help with a sprint or something for a couple months."
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's all going to depend on what Marathon uses as an engine, because it's harder to bring those resources into Destiny,
Mm-hmm.
because Destiny is this, it's got a proprietary engine, so it's hard to do that. I genuinely wonder, we heard the rumors that this was being made in Unreal 5. I don't know if that's still happening. But that would be the biggest thing, is allow them to properly staff, which, I mean, they were properly staffed, which is really, really frustrating. But if you're doing it with Unreal, I think that makes it easier to bring in outside teams to help out, and to bring in temps and things like that. If you can focus a lot more of Marathon on like that aspect, you can divert more of the studio to helping with Destiny. I do think that I speak for just about everyone when I say that we really, really want the stories and the expansions like the Final Shape to continue, but it's really hard when you just laid off some of your best storytellers. Like, yeah, Julia and Allison are still there, but like Robert and Hazel are gone, and they're responsible for some of the absolute best stories and characters that we've gotten.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. Like that's really, really hard to see. So I would say that also telling Bungie, hey, you can take your time. You can take your time. If it's going to take you 18 months with this staff to make a big expansion, take the 18 months.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Just maybe do a mini expansion in that off year or something. Like adopt a Final Fantasy 14 style schedule or a WoW type schedule. They release an expansion every 2 years, you know?
Right.
And look how packed those expansions are.
Right.
Look how much time people spend in those games, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think something like that would go over a little bit well. Other things I would love for Sony to get rid of the dungeon key, but they're not going to. Bungie being told to overhaul not just the new player experience, but to pull stuff out of the content vault to let people figure out. I would love for a mandate to happen. Bring in Sony's engineers if you got to do it. Figure out a way to allow people to download the old campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
The raids, yeah, I want all the raids back too, but like I'll just kind of take what I can get right now. Like I understand that splitting the player base that much is going to be a problem, but there's no reason why the old strikes and patrol zones can't be out there. There's no reason why the campaigns can't be an optional download.
Right.
And if you have those locations, that's more places to tell stories. Like, especially now that the whole reason that the planets were gone, which was the witness took them. They're not gone anymore. They're there. So why not? I do think there's some things you can do, but I'm overall not. I want to see what they have to say in a couple weeks, and then I'd be willing to revisit this question.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's going to kind of decide if I'm going to be optimistic or not. Sony taking full control is both a good and a dangerous thing, I think, because yes, Sony has. We said it when they purchased them. Sony is probably the premier first party talent in the world. They consistently put out Game of the Year nominees every single year.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing it, but they want the cross collaboration of something like a Nintendo, and that's just not possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to see what they have to say. I want to know kind of what the future looks like. We need to see some marathon gameplay. But yeah, there's not a whole lot Sony can do right now. But I need to see steps taken in the showcase and over the next 6 to 9 months to really give me. We need to know what Frontiers is exactly too. Also, is Frontiers just going to be another series of episodes and free updates, or is it going to be kind of a medium-sized expansion setting up for a larger world? I would love if they came out and said, hey, we're doing Frontiers, it's going to be a bit on the smaller side, but stick with us because Frontiers is the launch of the next, and it does seem like it's going to be the launch of the next multi-year arc, as indicated by the Twitter earlier. Hey, this is going to kind of be the jumping off point, kind of how Shadowkeep retroactively became the jumping off point for the end of the Witness saga,
Mm-hmm.
right? Allow this to be the small thing that kind of starts to bloom, and then as it blooms, boom, in 2026, we're aiming. I would love for them to come out and say, we're aiming for 2026, but if it takes until 27, it takes till 27. We want to come out and be able to deliver you an expansion that is just as big and as meaty as the final shape is.
Mm-hmm.
I would love for them to be able to come out and say those words. For obvious reasons, it's not going to happen. But I would really love for them to come out and just give that reassurance. It would be a lot like when we went into COVID and they told us, not only are we talking about Beyond Light today and about Stasis, they says we also want to reveal the Witch Queen and Lightfall, which will be the end of the Light and Dark saga. And obviously, Lightfall ended up not being, they had to split that into two.
Right.
Yeah. But in a perfect world where you don't have to do something like that and walk it back, yeah, I think announcing 3 expansions up front is a great idea. World of Warcraft just did this.
Mm-hmm.
They announced their next 3 expansions for this year. They did it last year at BlizzCon. They announced this year's expansion, 2026, 2028. Great. Let's get on a cycle like that for Destiny, so that way we know what to expect. And then maybe in the in-between years, you're doing these massive, huge updates to Marathon.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. There's plenty of 2-game studios. It's just most of them are doing like a multiplayer centric game and then single player development.
Right.
Like Obsidian or like Rare. ZeniMax teams, etc. So,
yep.
All right, Corey, we've got a twab to get to.
We've got a twab.
We've got a twab. Do we want to do twab first, or we want to talk about last week's Act 2 finale first?
Ooh.
Let's do it. Let's do a more positive note. Let's do it. Let's do the Act 2 finale.
Okay.
You've got. I'm assuming you've had a chance to play this mission.
Oh yeah. I played it.
So this was really cool. You start off where the battleground ends, where the final battleground ends, and you go actually into the core of Nessus. They call it the core of Nessus, but it doesn't feel like it is.
Yeah.
Well, it feels like it is. I should clarify that. When you walk up the random stairs at the end and you're immediately outside, it's like, oh yeah, that's really the core, guys. Yeah,
it is
really the core.
It's the core. Promise.
And this was a pretty swell little mission. Not hard by any means, but it took us back to a beloved location, or an infamous location, I guess I should say, not beloved. Saint 14's grave in the Infinite Forest. We go back and see it, and they plug into the dead Saint 14 to get his memories.
Yeah,
and
this was so
it's powerful.
It is. It's also worth noting that Nessus is some sort of like archival thing from the Infinite Forest. Some like
it's basically like a Vex computer at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. I really liked this though. I thought the mission was cool. I think that's a unique way to bring something like the Infinite Forest back, like just a little bit, instead of us actually going to Mercury, so they don't have to fully put the patrol zone back in.
Yeah.
Because I mean, let's be honest, Mercury was like nothing. You can keep that one, Bungie. You don't have to unvault it. I like that. And then when you exit, you get hit with the identity of the conductor, which, if you've been reading along in the lore and on some of the weapon tabs and stuff, you probably put 2 and 2 together at this point. The conductor looks a lot like Lakshmi too.
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, it's Maya Sundaresh.
Yep.
She's taken the appearance of Lakshmi, which the story of Maya and Shia Somi is wild. But you just like very briefly, like she basically decided she was going to interact with the Vex and then was never seen again. Maya disappeared into the Vex network. And Shioma, her wife, went after her eventually because she was so mad. But yeah, hid the location of Niamuna and all this. Like they've kind of been building to this reveal for a little while. Like really since Lightfall came out, they've been building to this reveal.
Yeah. I mean,
if you did any of the Veil containment stuff and read any of the Neomunian lore, even going back to the Endless Night, which was the Vex attack on the city, they've really, like, again, this is kind of what we're gonna lose. Bungie's storytellers had kind of threaded this for a few years. I'm like, oh, what are we doing with the Vex? And then it's like, oh shit, it's Maya Sundaresh. This is a reveal we've waited for so long in the lore.
Mm-hmm.
Since the earliest days of the game, we've waited to see more of Maya.
Mm-hmm.
And, more of Maya's ideas and this and that. And so now the question is this actually a Maya Sundaresh, or is this a copy of her that the Vex have made?
Mm-hmm.
That becomes the question. And there's only 3 weeks left to answer it. But Maya basically intends to use, or whoever this Maya is, I'm going to put that in quotation marks.
Do you think that it's too obvious that it's her, that they're going to try to, make a twist?
Because I hope not. With 3 weeks to go, I really hope they just stick to their guns. Because I think this is actually a fascinating idea.
I think it's great.
Everything exists within the network, and we know Asher is still fucking around in the network.
Oh yeah.
My thought is she probably escapes, albeit without the Echo, and we deal with her down the line in Frontiers or in a future expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Just means she could just retreat to the Vex Forge or deep into the Vex network, which has no boundary. So I'm interested to see what happens there. I think there's some really interesting plot lines you can go there, but the moments between Saint and Osiris are just they're so powerful in this, and just the rage that Saint feels. Saint's ready to Saint and Osiris are ready to blow her head off, and Osiris kind of recognizes like, oh shit, we got to get out of here.
Yeah.
Because Saint and the Guardian are going to throw down with Maya, and then they start seeing the goblin spawn, and they're like, yep. I love how there's 2 goblins, and then she makes 2 more raise up, and they're like, nope, time to go.
Yep.
Because Osiris is lightless.
Yep.
You know, what's Osiris supposed to do?
Right.
So I thought that was a nice little twist, but that is, to me, that is a really, really cool mission. I think it's the best mission of the season so far, bar none. This is stuff that I really wish would stay in the game longer term, for those who maybe don't get to the season right away. But yeah, it's been really nice. I enjoyed this. This was the first week where I went, okay, something actually happened in the story, and not just in the audio logs or in the lore pages. It felt like something actually meaningful was happening here.
Right.
And I think that's just that the importance of that cannot be understated right now.
Yeah.
In a season that we've both blasted for being nothing. It makes me more hopeful for next season in terms of the storytelling, that we can play all 3 weeks of it of an act up front. Which I've had that clarified for me, that is the acts and not the entire episode up front, which I initially thought it was. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I cannot blow through an entire episode storyline in like 2 days to not get spoiled. An act is much more manageable. That's much more manageable to me. Excited to see what they do with Act 3, though. We've got that coming up in 2 weeks. Well, really 3 weeks for the sake of the show, 2.5 weeks in game. Looking forward to it. I think that there's some really interesting avenues you can go here. It's a matter of if they're going to be allowed to, but it's like, oh, that's a reveal that I wasn't expecting to see necessarily, even though they've been building to it. And it kind of throws the whole, well, the season sucks because it's attached to the expansion trope, not necessarily out the window, but I would say the loot's been great this season. The story, if we can get there, the story will be good. I think the battlegrounds actually feel a bit challenging. On higher, I haven't done them on Legend yet, but I think that especially the one that is straight up the boss out of the Infinite Forest, the giant Hydra at the end, or not Hydra, Cyclops, is a wild fight, because people don't understand, when you get hit with the Slova bomb, you are slowed.
Yeah.
So if your teammates aren't keeping you alive, good luck. You have to constantly be on the move. I like that. I actually can't wait to see that as a GM. I think that's going to be absolutely wild next year. But all things considered, I do think, like, when we look at some of these seasons that have been attached, like this, I joked that this was Season of the Undying just as an episode instead. And instead we've taken a turn with the story where I'm like, oh shit, this is actually really impactful. It's just a shame that it took us 5 weeks to get there.
Right.
It should never have taken that many weeks. Like, this is a reveal that should have been this should have been the reveal at the end of Act 1, not the end of Act 2, in my opinion. But who knows? Like, I think you could have set up a really cool storyline with, like, oh, you fight through the battlegrounds in Act 2 to get back to that simulation of the forest and get back there, like, throw down with Maya. Maybe Chioma is still alive inside the network and contacts you, or Asher does, and that's up to the exotic quest. Something like that. Like, there's things you could have done.
There's also a chance to do the Infinite Forest right this time around.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, remember, that was our biggest gripe, is it was just kind of like, oh, it's kind of the same every time. They just threw Fallen in here instead of Cabal. But, like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've said this already, so I don't need to go too much more into that, I guess.
Yeah. So, all right. Twid time?
Twid
time?
Twid time.
I'm going with the Twab. I call it the Twid. I apologize.
Twab.
There's a lot in here about Solstice. We're going to talk Solstice next week, just because, I mean, we kind of have to have something to talk about next week. We're going to talk Solstice next week. I am not a fan of how they're doing the armor this year. I think it's actually, like, way more grindy than it needs to be. Shout out to people who already have the mementos and are complaining that they're not getting more than one. Shout out to you. I'm turning in these fucking bounties and not getting a single package is what I'm not seeing. So I kudos if you are already blowing through this and getting your mementos. That is a lot of grinding to do already. GG's. The armor does look significantly better also with it glowing. I will finally admit that. I want some time this week to play with the bow. Haven't had a chance to play with the bow yet. The memento looks pretty swell. There's a lot of weapon and armor tuning details in here. I'm gonna kind of blow through these quickly, just for the sake of time. Few things that I want to highlight in here, including aggressive scout rifles are getting a 30% damage buff in PvE. Dead Man's Tale is also affected by this. So that's good news for anybody who enjoys using the cowboy rifles. Legendary heavy burst pulse rifles, which are the 2 burst. We're displaying the wrong RPM. It should be 300, not 395. Snipers in PvE, reducing flinch taken from combatants by 50%. That's a pretty rad change, I think. Desperately trying to make snipers more usable. But I imagine this probably had to be applied because of Still Hunt and Whisper being 2 of the best damage options in the game. Glaives increase melee damage in PvE by 20%. That's cool. I always enjoy running a glaive. I just haven't been doing it a lot lately. Slap on a glaive with some Triton vices on a hunter and go to town. Looking to see what else we need. Special ammo rocket assisted frame sidearms corrected an issue that allowed them to progress ammo finders as if they were primary weapons. That's kind of wild. That they were processing it as if they were primary weapons. So that would explain why I was always drowning in green bricks and could just spam aberrant action for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Oh boy, here we go.
Oh boy.
Under specific situations, such as stacking multiple sticky grenades and detonating them all at once, players could launch themselves with massive acceleration and break traversal in ways Mountaintop wasn't intended to. To address this, we've added a cap, 20 meters per second or 44 miles per hour,
Jeez,
to the speed you can gain via Mountaintop jumping.
Jeez.
So they've also said that they may have to revisit this because there's player reports of some cases besides stacking stickies being adversely affected by this. You probably shouldn't have fucked with this at all, but whatever. Exotics. So one of the big ones, probably the biggest one here that we need to talk about is conditional finality. It still remains the most effective shotgun in Crucible by a wide margin, with a kills over expected more than 2.5 times higher than the next closest competitor in the top 10. Chaperone, for those who are curious. When's the last time you thought about using the Chaperone? Conditional finality, reduced base handling by 15, can no longer freeze players who are in a well of radiance. This was actually a bug, as players who are in a well of radiance should not be able to be frozen by any sources, but we held off correcting it until well had been brought down its PvP effectiveness. Why? I don't understand this. Like, I get it, but it's both a good and a maddening change. I don't like. I'm having a hard time, I think, understanding what the purpose of this is, because it's an exotic weapon, and you can't proc the exotic perk in a well against an opponent. Like, I get it, but the whole reason that people ran well and bubble as much as they did was to try and counteract conditionals. Like, I mean, like, I guess I get it, but I also don't know anybody who's running well in PvP these days.
Right.
I also admittedly have not played a lot of 3v3, if any, since the final shape came out, so I don't know if it's different in trials and comp. But this seems like it's not addressing the core issue that people have had with this gun, which is, you freeze them and then you're immediately shattering them.
Right.
That's the core issue here. Like, the very nature of the gun is the issue.
Right.
So if you've had problems with conditional finality, write in and tell me all about it. Perks. Due to an issue with the construction of the recombination perk, a rare condition could sometimes cause the perk to deactivate before the bonus damage was applied, so we've rebuilt it on the back end to maintain the same functionality but activate consistently as intended. And then Threat Remover, increased buff duration from 5 to 7 seconds, reduced the pellet proc from 12 to 11, and added a handling scaler. So it is more noticeable when Threat Remover is active. And then there's some adept weapon mods that have been changed here. I think the only one we were ever consistently all using was adept big ones, to be frank.
Yeah.
There's some changes to counterbalance, mag, and targeting. Removed range penalty, handling penalty, and stability penalty. Regardless, we do have a few upcoming changes. I am excited about some of these. Buff underperforming subfamilies like adaptive SMGs and rapid fire heavy grenade launchers, greatly increasing shotgun range in PvE. I am excited about that.
Me too.
I am excited about that. There's not a whole lot of reasons to run a shoddy in PvE content. And then buffs to numerous underutilized exotic weapons. Huckleberry, Chaperone, Bad Juju, Exdirus, Prospector, etc. I'm very excited to see what they do with Huckleberry and Bad Juju personally.
When was the last time you thought about Bad Juju?
Fairly recently, actually.
Oh, really?
I'm not gonna lie, with the addition of Prismatic, I've actually been thinking about it a lot.
Yeah,
I enjoy getting my super back even faster.
Yeah, that's fair.
If you have a build where like you rely on, and I think like when you were trying to pop wells or something like that, it was more important.
Mm-hmm.
We just have so many ways to generate extra super energy now that it kind of felt a little unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always liked running that with something like Orpheus rigs, where or Galanor, something that refunds super energy. I always liked running that in combo with it because I'm getting it back even faster.
Mm-hmm.
And buffs to underutilized perks, including Iron Banner specific perks, Slideways, Alloy Mag, Master of Arms, etc. And a significant weapon mod rework with the addition of 10 plus new mods.
Ooh.
I'm very excited to see what that is. These are being queued up for episode Revenant. I hope that these are shipping at the beginning of the season, because if they are, 10 new mods for weapons is going to be crazy to play with. I'm very excited for that. Weapon mods kind of feel like they're in a weird place now, with adept big ones being gone, with so many others being rolled into actual weapon perks now. It's time. It's time for new mods. We haven't had a new weapon mod in a hot minute. By a hot minute, I mean a few years.
Mm-hmm.
It's time. I'm very excited for it. Let's hit on armor real fast here. Armor team is largely heads down on work for Revenant. We'll be updating several underperforming exotic armor pieces. But for this update, we want to get some fixes and adjustments in for a few outliers. Hunters, Radiant Dance Machines. Tell me where you've heard this. Radiant Dance Machines are nerfed again.
Again.
We made an adjustment last year to Radiant Dance Machines that prevented them from allowing repeated use of the Strand and Snaring Slam aspect. Our philosophy for these boots is that they should not allow repeated use of any aspect that consumes your class ability energy or otherwise provides significant effects to your dodge. The fact they allowed repeated use of the new Ascension aspect was an oversight we want to correct. Fixed an issue where players could repeatedly activate the Ascension aspect. That's annoying, but like that's the very core of what Radiant Dance Machines is being able to activate your dodge multiple times. That's the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
It's the entire point of it.
Yeah.
Is to be able to get my dodge abilities back.
Yep.
Whatever. Warlock,
Sorry,
Getaway Artist. Getaway Artist is getting a bit of a nerf here. Getaway Artist allows Prismatic Warlocks to get both an Arc Soul and a Stasis Turret for the price of a single grenade. This is a playstyle we love seeing emerge in the community. However, when paired with Feed the Void, grenade uptime ended up being much greater than expected for minimal build crafting input. So Getaway Artist will no longer grant grenade energy on Arc Soul hits while the player has Devour active. I do like that, and I do think that this is still effective. It's a little less potent. The end, Getaway Artist is still going to be one of the best options. If not, it is still probably the premier Warlock option. We had a question last week about getaway artist Warlock builds. I did not get a chance to get to that this week or this week, to be honest with you. I was going to do some research. I saw a few folks reaching out in the community to that player, though, about it, so I feel a little bit better. I will solicit some non getaway artist builds, though, or exotics that you should be thinking about building around this week, as neither one of us plays a Warlock. It's kind of a problem. Mm-hmm. Spirit of the Star Eater on Sopalism was boosting the damage of ignitions triggered by Song of Flame. Ignitions are never intended to benefit from bonus super damage regardless of the source. So that's being fixed. And then Spirit of Osteomancy was a challenge to balance on each grenade, as Prismatic Warlock differs drastically in the uptime and damage it can dish out. We feel good about how this exotic perk interacts with most of the grenade options. However, Vortex grenades thrown into large groups of enemies were gaining back far more energy than we intended. So that's been taken away. Reserve armor mods. This is a thing. We're making a change so that you can no longer swap off reserve mods while retaining a higher ammo count. We understand that for a while now, players have been relying on those increased reserves to overcome our most challenging encounters. But so we are also increasing base reserves for all weapons as part of this same change and reducing the energy cost of reserve mods to make them easier to fit into your loadouts. So reserve ammunition for all ammo types has been increased by up to 15%, and the cost of reserve mods has been reduced by 1 across the board. I can dig it. Mm-hmm. I can dig it. We knew that was coming. I like it. Because that is something that's only affecting, like they said, that's affecting the top tier of the game. But it's nice that they're doing it, and everybody gets to benefit now from it.
Yeah.
Upcoming changes for Revenant include updates to underperforming perks on the exotic class items, particularly for Titans, buffs and reworks for underused exotic armor pieces, such as Mask of the Quiet One, Skull of Dire Ahamkara, and Blight Ranger. Blight Ranger, which has been useless since the day it came into the game. One of the absolute coolest looking armor pieces in the history of Destiny is total dog shit and always has been. All it allowed you was to deactivate your arc staff early.
I gotta look at this.
It's so bad. It is one of the coolest armor pieces. I love the ornament for it. I just got the ornament out of a Bright Ingram on Tuesday, and I can't even use it. It's plenty of other small tweaks to exotic armor aiming to provide meaningful utility boosts. So yeah, that's all from the armor team. We do have a little bit here on Pathfinder feedback. I have complained about Pathfinder. I think Pathfinder in the Pale Heart, it's great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's trash everywhere.
Pathfinder in ritual activities sucks dick. It's terrible. I try not to engage with it as much as possible. There have been some changes in Acts 1 and 2 to address player feedback, such as ensuring there will always be a way to complete Pathfinder cards purely through PvE gameplay. That is a fucking lie, I think. We've also addressed some overly specific objectives, such as being the requirement of Cabal kills and strikes, which has been generalized for progress on any enemy faction. I don't know how you didn't think about that ahead of time, but I guess that's what happens when you lay off QA. Looking into the near future, discoverability and general progression are the top priorities. We want players to be able to find Pathfinder more easily. The node is a bit small, and we want objectives to better align with the activities you're getting set for. Getting 10 grenade kills in PvP without dying is a bit too much of a challenge. Some changes will be a bit quicker to ship, while others will take time. That's a big way of saying don't expect changes soon. As we continue to absorb and address player feedback, we want to make sure players were earning XP and Bright Dust at expected rates. We had no intentions of reducing either of these rewards when moving from bounties to the Pathfinder system, and we have started doing weekly increases to weekly well-rested XP, but have another that started this week with the update. As of August 6th, players can visit Eververse to claim 350 Bright Dust each week through the start of maintenance for Episode 2 on October the 8th. Each deposit is only there for 1 week. We'll have more news to share on Pathfinder changes in the coming weeks. I would expect the Pathfinder update to maybe come when they talk about Frontiers. Mm-hmm. Maybe. But who knows when that's actually going to take effect. I mean, Fireteam Finder got announced like post Witch Queen and took until, or leading up to Lightfall. Yeah, I think it got announced leading up to Lightfall or leading up to Witch Queen, one of the two, and it didn't come out until well after Lightfall, something like that. I kind of lose track of when Fireteam Finder actually came out. But regardless, it took like almost 2 years from the initial announcement, so not going to hold my breath here. I'm going to be completely honest.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold it, Josh.
No. I think that's it. I think that's all we got here in the TWAB this week. This sick ass Cade skateboard deck is awesome. Down here for Artist of the Week. I fucking love this.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Nobody makes my own fate but me. It's Cade, Sundance, and of course the Ace of Spade.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. That is genuinely a unique piece of art that we have not seen something like that before. We had 2 other questions tonight, both coming from Jigglypan, and then we're gonna head out of here. I apologize. We'll get back to Lore Corners. I want to take some time to get some Maya Sundaresh, get like a TLDR on her put together. This has been a wild week, but I'll be laid up recovering this weekend, and I can have some time to write. Jiggly Panda writes in and says, do you think the 10th anniversary content will be free, or are we going to pay for it? If you ask us to pay for it at this point, you are asking for people to stop playing this game.
See, I was gonna go the route of it's probably gonna be like the 30th anniversary stuff where you probably have to pay for.
Oh, I hope not.
Something.
I will be genuinely mad if we pay for this content right now, because the 30th anniversary stuff, we had that fucking leaked like a year in advance.
I'm telling you, you're gonna have to pay for this.
The only way I can see them having us pay for this, because keep in mind the 30th anniversary did include, it was mainly cosmetic, but it did include the dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
There is no dungeon that is going to be coming with this. I guarantee you that.
Yeah.
You are getting at most an exotic quest.
Mm-hmm.
If you can charge for it, but it better be like $5 to $10. And I still think that that's egregious, considering you just laid off a good chunk of your studio and you're already nickel and diming players enough to where we don't, like, people are getting confused on what they need to have bought.
Mm-hmm.
I think it needs to be a free anniversary update. The 30th, I will say, was a little bit different. That was a celebration of Bungie as a whole. It included a dungeon. It included Gallarhorn, all that. If this is just going to be the objectives that have been leaked, there have been some stuff. There's been some stuff that's been data mined, a pop-up in-game that's going to happen, etc. I have no reason to believe that this is going to be paid content. Based on what we have seen currently, I would be genuinely infuriated if this was paid content. It's that minimal.
Man.
So I personally don't think it's coming. It's going to be paid. I hope not. I think gone are the days where Bungie could try and charge you for something like this. Maybe if you hadn't been charging for fucking dungeon keys for the last 3 years, we would be more receptive to it. Or maybe if the Eververse wasn't predatory. But that's my own 2 cents on it. Then what exotic do you think we're getting for the 10th anniversary if we were to get one? I don't have an answer for you there.
I think it's going to be something new, but
we got Kava. Here's the thing. We already got Galley back. We got Kavastov. I don't have an answer now.
I mean, we got Hawkmoon. We got
Hawkmoon back. We got Ace of Spades. Watch it just be a new variant of Ace of Spades.
I mean, I don't know what you do at this point.
I don't either.
I mean, do you?
I have no idea what you do.
Do you do one for? I don't know. I don't know.
There's not a single Destiny 1 weapon at this point you could bring back that would be worthy of this.
It's gonna have to be new. I thought maybe you could do one that would also be like a what do you call it? In memory of like Lance Reddick, and do something that's Zavala related, but like I don't think you would do that either. I don't know what you do.
I mean, maybe you unlock, maybe it's just like unlocking an exotic ornament. Maybe you get the shattered look of the Ace of Spades,
Maybe.
the glowing version of it.
Yeah, but is that?
I don't know, man. I have no idea what you do here. Like, all the iconic weapons from D1 are back.
Yeah, man,
Um,
I feel like the 10th anniversary of this game should be a bigger deal than it
I feel
is
like it
right
should
now.
be too. We have a giant fucking cloud hanging over it, though.
Yeah.
We should be really stoked. We should be getting really excited about this. And instead, it's a huge bummer that this is happening now.
Yeah.
At all, that management has gotten that bad. The 10th anniversary should be a much bigger deal. We are approximately 1 month out from the 10th anniversary of this game, and nobody is talking about it.
Yeah.
That is probably the most damning thing to me.
Yeah.
So I do think I don't think you can really do an exotic here. It's got to be something, like you said, it's got to be something brand new. Maybe it's that wacky. We saw concept art for it back when the final shape was announced. The heavy trace rifle that was the Traveler beam.
Right.
I know that we have Microsm, and they're probably really reluctant to give us another heavy trace so quickly. But I mean, maybe we just end up getting an ornament, right? I feel like this is going to be so much more Eververse focused, and like there's going to be some fun stuff. There are some data mine things, you can go looking for those if you want to. I won't stop you. I'm personally not going to talk about them on here. But it's really easy to find the details. I'm not gonna, run around saying it. My policy on spoiler related content. It is just a data mine. There are people who genuinely prefer to be just surprised. I have no reason to believe that we are getting anything of substance with this.
Yeah.
Man, there will be some little things, and that's enough. The tower will probably get decorated. I cannot imagine this being a huge deal. It's pretty bad that the 30th anniversary was a bigger celebration, but I also think the 30th anniversary had to be a bigger celebration because of the delay of the Witch Queen.
Yeah.
We talked about that before, how they were able to plan in advance for that.
Yeah. I also I think maybe you have to consider that Into the Light maybe was the 10th anniversary thing.
That's where I am. I don't know if I think the activity probably wasn't, but I think all the weapons were.
Yeah, and Pantheon and
the parade armor.
Yeah.
The parade armor really feels like it was supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Pantheon also feels like something that was supposed to be there.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if we'll get some sort of renewed version of Pantheon and that kind of stuff maybe makes a return.
It's possible. I would love if they had a new Pantheon to come out here. I do think it's a little too soon. Because I mean, what are you going to do to change up? You're just going to slap the Witness in at the end.
I mean, maybe.
I think personally, I think it's a little silly, but it could work.
Sure, but also if you consider it wasn't supposed to be there, and in the first place, maybe you have the dungeon version of whatever Pantheon is. I don't know.
Maybe a dungeon one I think would be fitting if you wanted to go that route.
Mm-hmm.
That could be cool. Again, I think at most you're going to see an exotic mission, and that's going to be that. And I don't think it's going to be anything too big brained, personally.
Yeah.
So yeah,
man,
that's where I sit on those.
What a bummer, man.
It's a bummer. We really should be more excited about 10th anniversary, and I'm sure once they start talking about it, once we have the showcase, we'll be excited. But it's just it's like last year. It was really hard to get into Season of the Wish so soon after what happened with the layoffs. I feel the same way right now. It's going to be really hard to get into Act 3 here in a couple weeks. And if I was a betting man, I would say that you're probably going to get the news about Frontiers, and the 10th anniversary is probably going to come whatever day Act 3 launches. If I was a betting man.
Yeah.
But I'm not, because I'm horrible at gambling. So, yeah, you get horrible guesses instead. Well, Corey.
Well, Josh.
Do you want to get us out of here?
Yeah. Man, what a bummer.
What a fucking bummer.
Well, everybody out there, I want to thank you all for watching and or listening to this episode of Tower Casuals. You can check us out every Friday on your podcast service of choice and on YouTube. Check out Xbox Casuals, our sister show, where we talk about Xbox and other things. Josh, thank you for your time tonight, as always. Where can we find you?
Oh boy, Josh_Finn, 2 N's.
2 of them.
2 of them.
You can find me on I Am Corey HD on the socials. Join the Discord. Like, subscribe, share, rate, and review wherever you listen or watch or consume. I don't know, maybe read the transcript of the show. That'd be dangerous. Thank you so much.
It's me saying fuck 15 times.
Jesus Christ. I want to thank you all for watching and or listening. And until next time, we love you. Goodbye.